My name is Andrew Collins. 5 years ago, I founded a startup that grew into a major tech company. I was married to Julia, beautiful, intelligent, but far too close to her mother, Margaret. Margaret always believed I had stolen their daughter and blinded her with money. When my father died, I inherited 60% of the family corporation. And that's when everything began. The first sign something was wrong came 3 weeks after my father's funeral. Julia stopped touching me. Not dramatically, just small things. She'd pull her hand away when I reached for it. She'd turn her head when I tried to kiss her goodnight. When I asked what was bothering her, she'd smile that practiced smile and say, "Nothing, darling. Just tired." But I knew my wife. We'd been together for 7 years, married for 4. I knew the difference between tired and distant. The second sign was Margaret's sudden interest in our finances. She'd always been controlling, but now she was calling Julia 3-4 times a day. Once, I walked into our home office and found Julia hastily closing her laptop. The guilty look on her face told me everything I needed to know, and nothing at all. "Mom's just worried about estate planning," Julia explained, her voice too bright. "With your father's passing, she thinks we should review our assets." It made sense. Wealthy families do that. But something in her tone felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced this explanation in the mirror. I let it go. That was my first mistake. The third sign came when I mentioned wanting to restructure the board of directors at Collins Technologies. My father had built the company from nothing, manufacturing components for telecommunications infrastructure. Under my leadership, we'd pivoted into software development and cloud services. The company had tripled in value. Why change what's working? Julia asked over dinner, her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Because Dad's old guard doesn't understand the tech space," I explained. "We need fresh perspective. Young blood." Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Your father trusted those people." "My father's dead, Jules." The words came out harsher than I intended. She set down her fork and left the table. I found her an hour later, on the phone in our bedroom. When she saw me, she said, "I have to go," and hung up quickly. "Who was that?" "Mom. She's upset about the board idea too." "Why the hell would you tell your mother about internal company decisions?" Julia's eyes flashed. "She's family, Andrew. She cares about us. About you. She hates me. Don't be paranoid." But I wasn't paranoid. I was observant. And what I observed over the next few weeks was a wife who was slipping away from me, guided by invisible strings I couldn't see. And that's when I realized she was never who I thought she was. 2 months after my father's death, I saw the text message. Julia was in the shower. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I wasn't the type to check my wife's messages. I'd always believed in privacy and trust. But something made me look. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was self-preservation. The message was from Margaret. "Plan almost ready. Just need him to sign the documents." My blood went cold. I screenshotted it and sent it to myself, then deleted the evidence from her phone. When Julia emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel and smiling, I was sitting on the bed, holding my own phone. "What documents?" I asked. Her smile faltered. "What?" I showed her the message. Watched her face carefully. For a moment, just a flash, I saw panic. Then it was gone, replaced by that practiced calm. "Oh, Andrew. Mom's being dramatic about the estate taxes. You know how she gets about money." "Estate taxes?" "Jules, my father died 2 months ago. The lawyers are handling all that. Mom wants to make sure we're protected. She's worried the IRS might." "Stop lying to me." The words hung between us like a blade. Julia's face hardened. "I'm not lying. You're being paranoid and cruel. I'm trying to help protect what we've built together, and you're accusing me of, what exactly? What do you think I'm planning?" I didn't know. That was the problem. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew roots in the dark soil of my suspicion. "Just be honest with me," I said quietly. "Whatever's going on, we can handle it together." She came to me then, wrapped her arms around my neck. "There's nothing going on, baby. I promise. Mom's just being mom. You know how she is." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. You won't believe what she did next. 1 week later, my brakes failed. I was driving home from the office, taking the winding road through the hills outside our estate. It was raining, not heavily, just enough to make the asphalt slick and reflective. I pressed the brake pedal as I approached a sharp curve. Nothing happened. I pressed harder. The pedal went to the floor. No resistance. No slowing. Panic hit me like a freight train. I yanked the emergency brake. The car fishtailed but didn't slow. I was doing 60 miles per hour on a road designed for 30, headed straight for a guardrail that overlooked a 100-foot drop. Time slowed. I saw everything with crystalline clarity. The rain on the windshield, the yellow line disappearing under my hood, the tree line approaching too fast. I remembered Julia's face that morning, kissing me goodbye. Had there been sadness in her eyes? Or had I imagined it? I jerked the wheel hard right, trying to avoid the guardrail. The car spun, tires screaming. The world became a blur of gray and green. Then impact. Metal shrieked. Glass exploded. Pain erupted in my chest, my head, everywhere. The car was rolling, tumbling down the hillside. I tried to protect my head, but my arms wouldn't respond. Another impact, harder this time. Then darkness. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed I didn't recognize. The room was small, outdated. Not the pristine private facilities my insurance would have covered. A nurse I'd never seen before was checking my vitals. When she saw my eyes open, she gasped. "Doctor, he's awake." A tired-looking man in his 50s rushed in. "Mr. Doe, can you hear me? Do you know where you are?" "Doe." My voice came out as a rasp. "My name is Andrew Collins." The doctor and nurse exchanged glances. "You had no identification on you when the hikers found you. You've been unconscious for 3 days. We've been trying to find your family. My wife, Julia Collins. My phone. Your phone was destroyed in the accident. We found the wreckage of your car at the bottom of Blackwood Ravine. You're very lucky to be alive, Mr. Collins. A group of hikers saw your car go over and climbed down to help. Without them, you would have died before anyone found you." I tried to sit up. Pain lanced through my ribs. "I need to call my wife. She must be worried sick." Another glance between the doctor and nurse. This one heavier. "What?" I demanded. "What's wrong?" The doctor pulled up a chair. "Mr. Collins, I need to tell you something difficult. We did find identification in your car, eventually. We contacted your home. We spoke to a woman claiming to be your wife." "Julia." "Yes. Where is she?" "She told us you were already dead." The room tilted. "What?" "Your wife held a funeral for you 2 days ago. She told our hospital administrator that we must have the wrong person, that her husband had already been found dead and buried." She hung up before we could explain further. I couldn't breathe. The heart monitor beside me started beeping faster. "That's impossible. Why would she?" But even as I said it, I knew. The message. The plan. The documents I never signed. The brakes that failed too conveniently. "I need to make a phone call," I said. "Now." I called my lawyer, Marcus Chin, from the hospital phone. He'd been my father's attorney for 20 years, and mine for the past 5. When he heard my voice, he went silent for a full 10 seconds. "Andrew? Is this a joke?" "I'm alive, Marcus. And I need you to tell me what the hell is going on." What he told me over the next hour made my blood run cold. Julia had reported me dead the day after my accident. She'd claimed that my body had been recovered from the wreckage and identified by dental records. She'd arranged a closed casket funeral, citing the severity of the injuries, that had been attended by hundreds of business associates, friends, and family. Marcus had been there. He'd given a eulogy. "How did she get dental records?" I asked. "I don't know. But Andrew, there's more. She presented documents to the board, signed by you, transferring your shares of Collins Technologies into a trust controlled jointly by her and Margaret. The signatures looked legitimate. I examined them myself. I never signed any such documents. I'm starting to realize that. There's more. She's liquidated your personal accounts, sold the family house in Connecticut, even sold your father's vintage car collection. She's claiming it's all to settle the estate and cover funeral expenses." "Funeral expenses?" "Marcus, I inherited $40 million when my father died. What funeral costs that much? None. Which is why I've been suspicious. But without you here to contest it, and with seemingly legitimate documents, my hands were tied. The bank required a death certificate to stop the transactions, and she provided one. A fake death certificate. A very good fake. Andrew, whoever helped her do this, knew what they were doing. This is sophisticated fraud." "What about the company?" Marcus sighed. "She's already installed herself as CEO. Your CFO, Richard Torres, has been promoted to president. They've announced a major pivot in company strategy and are courting new investors. Richard Torres, Julia's college boyfriend. The man I'd hired 5 years ago because Julia vouched for his financial acumen. The man I'd trusted with my company's money. They're together, aren't they?" I asked quietly. I've heard rumors. I'm sorry, Andrew. I hung up and stared at the hospital ceiling. My wife had tried to kill me. When that failed, she declared me dead anyway. She'd stolen my company, my money, my life. And she'd done it with the help of my own CFO and her manipulative mother. The old Andrew would have been devastated. The old Andrew would have trusted the system, called the police, let justice take its course. But the old Andrew was dead. I spent 2 more days in the hospital, recovering and planning. Marcus arranged for a private investigator to gather evidence. What we found was damning and insufficient. Julia and Margaret had been meticulous. The forged documents were perfect. The death certificate had been filed through legitimate channels. Someone had been paid off, but we couldn't prove who. The funeral had been real, attended by real people. There had even been a body in the casket, a John Doe from the county morgue who matched my general description. The bank transfers were all above board, executed with proper authorization codes. Julia had access to those codes. She was, after all, my wife. We can prove fraud, Marcus said over a secure call. But it will take months, maybe years. And in the meantime, they're dismantling everything your father built. We need leverage. What kind of leverage? A confession. Get them to admit what they did, on record, and we can move fast. How am I supposed to do that? Marcus was quiet for a moment. I heard Julia and Margaret are hosting a gala next week. A charity fundraiser to announce their new vision for Collins Technologies. Every major player in the tech and investment world will be there. It's being held at the Grandview Hotel. You want me to crash my own memorial fundraiser? I want you to make them think they've won. Let them get comfortable, arrogant. Then expose them publicly. If you can get them to admit what they did in front of witnesses, we can use that testimony. Plus, I'll give you a recording device. Get it on tape, and we have everything we need. It was risky, dramatic, probably insane. I loved it. And what happened next? Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. The Grandview Hotel was as opulent as I remembered. I'd attended events there before, back when I was alive. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and was filled with San Francisco's elite. Everyone who was anyone in tech and venture capital was there. I wore a black suit, simple but expensive. I'd kept my hair slightly longer than before, and I'd grown a short beard during my recovery. I looked like myself, but different enough that I might buy a few seconds of confusion before recognition set in. Marcus had given me a high-end digital recorder, small enough to fit in my watch. All I had to do was get close to Julia and Margaret, trigger them into confession, and let the device do its work. I entered through the main doors. Immediately, heads turned. A woman gasped. A man dropped his champagne flute. I walked through the crowd like Moses through the Red Sea. People parted, staring, whispering. I heard fragments. Can't be. Thought he was dead. Looks just like. Then I saw her. Julia stood on the raised platform at the front of the ballroom, wearing a stunning red dress. She was laughing at something Richard Torres had said, her hand on his arm. She looked happy, radiant, not at all like a grieving widow. Margaret stood beside her, regal in black, holding court with several board members. Julia saw me. The color drained from her face. The glass in her hand slipped, shattering on the platform. The tinkling crash silenced the nearby conversations. Andrew? Her voice was barely a whisper, but in the sudden quiet, everyone heard it. Hello, Julia, I said calmly. Surprised to see me? The ballroom erupted in whispers. I walked forward, my eyes never leaving my wife's face. Richard Torres stepped back, his expression shifting from confusion to fear. I climbed the steps to the platform. Marcus had positioned himself near the front, recording everything on his phone as backup. You can't be, Julia stammered. Dead. I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. No, darling. Just inconvenient. Margaret recovered faster than her daughter. This is insane. Andrew, what kind of sick joke is this? Your funeral was last week. Was it? I turned to the crowd. Did anyone actually see a body? Or did you all just trust the grieving widow? Murmurs spread through the room. I could see doubt creeping into faces. I turned back to Julia, activating the recorder with a subtle tap of my watch. Tell them the truth, Jules. Tell them how you sabotaged my car. How you forged my signature. How you faked my death to steal my company. I would never. She looked desperately at her mother. Margaret stepped forward, her face a mask of righteous indignation. How dare you? We mourned you. Julia has been devastated. And now you show up here, making wild accusations? Maybe the accident affected your mind. Did it? I pulled out my phone, showing the screenshot of Margaret's text message. Plan almost ready. Just need him to sign the documents. Want to explain what plan you were referring to, Margaret? Her face paled, but she recovered. Estate planning. Completely normal for a family of your wealth. Is faking my death normal too? The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Julia found her voice. You're alive. Thank God you're alive. Andrew, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. The police told me they found your body. I identified. A corpse from the county morgue? Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Richard Torres tried to slip away toward the back exit. I called out, Richard, don't leave. You're part of this story too. Tell everyone about your relationship with my wife. Did it start before or after you helped her embezzle my money? He froze. Julia's composure finally cracked. You don't understand. You were never going to appreciate me. Everything was always about the company, about your father's legacy. I was just your accessory. So you tried to kill me? No. The brakes, that was an accident. A real accident. Then why did you declare me dead when I survived? She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at her mother, and Margaret, in a moment of panic and rage, gave me exactly what I needed. Because you should have just signed the damn documents, she shrieked. If you'd just given Julia the recognition she deserved, made her an equal partner instead of treating her like a trophy wife, we wouldn't have had to do any of this. You forced our hand. The ballroom exploded in gasps and exclamations. I had it. A full confession, witnessed by 200 of the most influential people in San Francisco. But then, and what happened next, even shocked me. A security guard, overzealous and confused by the chaos, rushed the platform. He grabbed my arm. Sir, you need to leave. You're disrupting the event. I'm the disruption? I tried to shake him off. This woman faked my death. Another guard joined the first. They were trying to escort me away. I struggled, reaching for my watch to stop the recording, to save it before. The first guard grabbed my wrist. My watch and the recorder went flying. It arced through the air in slow motion, and landed directly in the ornamental fountain at the center of the ballroom. No! I lunged for it, but the guards held me back. By the time I broke free and plunged my hand into the water, it was too late. The device was submerged, ruined. The recording was gone. I turned back to the platform, water dripping from my sleeve. Julia and Margaret were already being escorted out by different security guards. Richard had disappeared entirely. Marcus pushed through the crowd to me. Please tell me you got the backup. I did, he said, holding up his phone. But Andrew, it's not going to be enough for a criminal case. It's just a video from a phone, not official testimony. A good lawyer will tear it apart. We need more. I slumped. I'd had them. A full confession, perfectly recorded. And now it was gone, drowned in decorative fountain water. But here's the thing about public confessions. They don't need to be admissible in court to ruin someone's reputation. By morning, Marcus's video had been seen by 15 million people. It was on every tech news site, every business channel. Dead CEO crashes Gala expose wife's fraud, was the headline on Bloomberg. Forbes ran a feature, The Collins Scandal, When Inheritance Goes Wrong. The board of directors held an emergency meeting. Julia and Richard were fired immediately. Margaret was banned from all company property. The investors pulled out of the new deals Julia had been negotiating. Partners canceled contracts. The PR nightmare was total and complete. Without the recording, I couldn't press criminal charges. The police investigated, but Julia and Margaret had covered their tracks too well. The forged signatures? They claimed I'd signed them in a depressed state before the accident and forgotten. The death certificate? A bureaucratic error by a low-level clerk who'd since left the country. The confession at the gala? Emotional hyperbole, taken out of context. Their lawyers were good. Too good. But I didn't need them to go to jail. I just needed them to lose everything. The board voted unanimously to reinstate me as CEO. I walked back into my office, the office where I'd built my company, 3 weeks after the gala. Someone had already boxed up Julia's personal items. She tried to reach out, of course. Letters. Emails. Finally, she showed up at the office building. Security called me before letting her up. Mr. Collins, your ex-wife is here. Should we send her away? I thought about it. Thought about the 7 years we'd spent together. The promises we'd made. The life we'd built, or that I'd thought we'd built. Send her up, I said. She looked smaller somehow, standing in my office doorway. The red power dress was gone, replaced by jeans and a sweater. Her eyes were red from crying. Andrew, please. Let me explain. I don't think there's anything to explain, Julia. I never meant for it to go this far. Mom, she convinced me that you were going to leave me out of everything. That I'd be just like my father, cast aside when I wasn't useful anymore. Her father had divorced Margaret when Julia was 12, leaving them with relatively little in the settlement. It was Margaret's defining trauma, the wound she'd never healed. And apparently, she'd passed it on to her daughter. So you decided to fake my death instead of just talking to me. I panicked. When the brakes failed, Andrew, I swear, that was a real accident. We had nothing to do with that. But when they said you were dead, Mom said it was a sign. That we should take the opportunity to secure our future. It spiraled out of control so fast. You bought a corpse, Julia. You had a funeral. That's not spiraling out of control. That's premeditated fraud. She wiped her eyes. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to understand why. I understand perfectly. You valued money more than you valued me. That's not fair, isn't it? You're here now because you've lost everything. If the plan had worked, you'd be living in my house with Richard, running my company, and I'd be rotting in an unmarked grave. Don't insult me by pretending you care about anything other than what I can give you. She flinched as if I'd struck her. I loved you once. Past tense. How appropriate. She stood there for another moment, then turned to leave. At the door, she paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About all of it. So am I. After she left, I sat at my desk for a long time, staring at the city through my window. I'd won. I had my company back, my reputation restored, my life returned. So why did I feel so empty? 6 months later, I sold Collins Technologies. I'd rebuilt it, stabilized it, even grown it. But every day in that office reminded me of what I'd lost. Not just Julia, but the naive belief that the people you love won't betray you for money. I sold it for $300 million and moved to Seattle. Started a new company, smaller, focused on cybersecurity and fraud prevention. The irony wasn't lost on me. I heard through Marcus that Julia and Margaret had left California. Julia was working at a mid-level marketing firm in Phoenix, using her maiden name. Margaret had moved in with her, unable to afford her previous lifestyle. Richard Torres was facing embezzlement charges from a different company. Apparently, stealing from me had been practice. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. One evening, I was working late in my new office when my assistant knocked. Mr. Collins? There's a detective here to see you. She says it's about your accident. I frowned. The accident case had been closed months ago. Send her in. The woman who entered was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with graying hair pulled into a tight bun. Mr. Collins, I'm Detective Sarah Reeves. I've been reviewing cold cases, and yours caught my attention. It's not cold. It was ruled an accident. That's what bothers me. The original investigator did minimal forensics on your vehicle. He assumed brake failure, wrote it up, moved on. But I pulled the file, and something didn't add up. So I went back to the impound yard. Your car's still there. She pulled out a file, set it on my desk. Inside were photographs of my car's brake line. Close-ups showing a clean cut, not a tear. Mr. Collins, your brakes didn't fail. They were cut. This was attempted murder. I stared at the photos. After everything, after all the lies and manipulations, here was proof. Julia hadn't just faked my death. She'd tried to cause it. Can you prove who did it? That's harder. But I can reopen the investigation. With your testimony about the events that followed, we might have enough to build a case. I looked at the photos for a long time. This was it. The evidence that could put Julia behind bars. Justice, real and tangible. No, I said finally. Detective Reeves blinked. Excuse me? I appreciate you bringing this to me, but I don't want to press charges. Mr. Collins, someone tried to kill you. I know. And they failed. And they lost everything because of it. Julia's living in a one-bedroom apartment, working for $40,000 a year. Her mother's broke. Richard's going to prison anyway. What more do you want from them? I want justice. So did I. And I got it. I closed the file, pushed it back toward her. She didn't kill me, detective. She killed herself, the life she wanted, the future she dreamed of. That's a worse sentence than any prison could give her. The detective studied me for a long moment. You're a more forgiving man than I would be. I'm not forgiving her. I'm just choosing not to let her poison the rest of my life. If I spend years prosecuting her, testifying, reliving this nightmare, she wins. She continues to control my story. I won't give her that power. After Detective Reeves left, I stood at my window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. Rain pattered against the glass. It always seemed to rain in Seattle. I'd grown to like it. The rain felt cleansing, like the city was constantly washing itself clean. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Board meeting went well. New company valued at 50M already. You did it again. I smiled. Yes, I had done it again. Built something from nothing. Proved I was more than my father's son, more than my company, more than the man Julia had tried to erase. I thought about that night at the Gala, watching the recorder sink into the fountain. At the time, it felt like losing everything. Now I realized it had been exactly what I needed. If I'd had that perfect recording, I would have spent years in court, consumed by the need for legal victory. Instead, I'd been forced to win a different way, by simply living well. The loudest revenge doesn't need sound, I thought. Sometimes it's enough to just survive. I turned back to my desk, to the plans for our next product launch, to the future I was building with my own hands. Julia had wanted to erase me. Instead, she'd erased herself. And I was still here, still building, still moving forward. That was victory enough. 5 years after the Gala, I received a letter. No return address, postmarked from Phoenix. Inside was a single handwritten page. Andrew, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect forgiveness or even acknowledgement. But I need to say it anyway. You were right. About everything. I valued money more than I valued you. I let my mother's fears become my own. I betrayed the one person who truly loved me, and I did it for things that meant nothing. I've spent 5 years in therapy, working through my damage. I can't undo what I did. I can't bring back the man you were before I broke your trust. But I want you to know that I understand now what I destroyed. You deserved better. You deserved honesty, partnership, love. You deserved a wife who saw your value beyond your bank account. I hope Seattle is good to you. I hope you found peace. I hope, someday, you'll meet someone who loves you the way I should have. I'm sorry. For all of it. For everything. Julia. I read the letter 3 times. Then I walked to my fireplace and burned it. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. But because some chapters need to end completely before new ones can begin. And I was ready for my next chapter. I was finally truly ready. Thank you for watching the video to the end. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. A playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to is now displayed on the screen. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.